Hello, welcome to Quick Truth. My name is Derek Truesdale, and this week I want to cover James 4, verses 1 through 10. Those verses are talking about a disconnection that can happen between our heart and what we really want to do. So if we're saying we're wanting to follow after God, but our heart is undercutting it, then there's going to be a tension there. And that's what James is talking about. He's saying when that tension exists, there's fights that happen, and there is dissatisfaction that happens. So we start that idea in chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Those verses say, "What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and you cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions." So he's saying, when you say you want something, but your heart is telling you that you don't really want that, it causes a disconnect. It causes fights and it causes dissatisfaction. And there's this envy that comes to play. So we saw at the end of chapter 3 that he's saying if you're humble and you're investing in other people, it causes a harvest of peace. But what's happening here, he's saying if there is fights and if there's dissatisfaction like there was in the time of James, then this is what's causing it. It's envy. And it's causing, when you're looking at somebody with envy, Jesus says if you look at somebody with hatred in your heart, then you're basically killing them. And that's what he says in these verses. And when that tension exists, that's something we need to handle because it causes these fights. It's internal disconnect, an internal conflict that is coming out and making external problems. So the people that cause these fights, there's an internal problem that needs to be dealt with. And there's a dissatisfaction that needs to be dealt with. A dissatisfied person cannot be at peace with God, with themselves, or with other people. So this is something that needs to be dealt with, and how we do that, and how James tells us to deal with it, is through humility and honesty. That's a theme throughout all of James, really, saying pride is the problem, how you deal with it, humility, and being honest with God. And we see the answer in verses 5 through 8. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the scripture says, he yearns jealously over the Spirit that he has made to dwell in us, but he gives more grace. Therefore it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. So James is saying, if you really want something, you have to want it with your heart as well. Because if you're just saying you want to serve God, but your heart says, I really don't want to go that far with it, I really don't want to serve God, it's going to undercut everything that you're doing. So when you ask yourself, what do you really want? You have to be honest. You can't just give the answer you know you should give. Say, I guess I want to serve God. What is it really in your heart? So if a robber is robbing a bank and he feels bad about it, but he doesn't want to give back the money, like he's not really sorry about it. He knows he should be, but he's not. You know, if we say we want to be kind to everyone, but then we think about this specific person, that person can't be, that's an exception. You know, if our heart is giving these exceptions, then we don't really want those things. So what's the answer? Being humble before God and being honest with God. Because God, when you're honest with him, can take it. Sometimes we think we have to fix ourselves up to come before God. He can't handle us as we truly are. But that's not true, because when you think about it, when you were lost, you were in your worst case scenario. And God came and saved you from that. So if he's willing to come to you then at your worst, he's willing to come to you now. And you can be honest with God at what you really think. Like if you know you should want this, but you don't, say, God, I don't really want that. Please help me to want it. And God understands where we're coming from because he became flesh. He became man. He knows how we feel about these things. So we should be honest with him. And that's a huge first step into solving this internal conflict that happens within us. And as it says here in James, draw closer to God and he will draw closer to you. This has been another Quick Truth. Thanks for watching. See you next time.